Hey guys, it's Kaylor. Welcome to the YouTube channel. In today's video, I have an Adobe XD, Adobe Photoshop design tutorial for you guys. We're gonna be creating this parallax effect on this website that you see right here. So not only are we gonna create this landing page website for this travel site, but we're gonna create this parallax effect using Photoshop and Adobe XD's prototype mode. So just like in the rest of my tutorials, I have the project file link down in the description, and that's gonna have the starting point for this tutorial. So I've got the landing artboard set up at 1920 by 1080, and I also have the 12 column grid layout, and I've adjusted the spacing on the sides to 92. So if you're not gonna be using the template I have for you, just make sure you adjust this to 92 on the left and the right of these 12 columns. In here, I also have the colors, character styles, and components that you'll need for this tutorial. Also included in the project file will be all the images from Unsplash that I'll be using in today's tutorial. So before we get started, today's video is sponsored by Milanote. Milanote is a bit different than traditional software. It's more like working on a wall in a creative studio. It allows you to map out your projects, gather and organize all of your inspiration in one convenient place, and it also allows you to collaborate with your colleagues or clients in real time. As a designer, it's an essential part of my workflow, and this awesome tool is free, so check out the link in the description. So to get started with this design, I'm gonna select my artboard and I'm gonna set this to a black color. It's almost pure black, but it's just got a little bit of gray in it. It's 171717 for the hex code. So I'm gonna set it to that. And in the center of the screen, I'm gonna grab my type tool, which is T on the keyboard, and I'm just gonna type out the word explore. The font family we're using today is Helvetica Neue. I don't know how to pronounce that. I've never known how to pronounce that in any of my videos. But for the title here in the center, we're gonna go with 170 points, and we're going to center this on the screen, and I'm also going to center align the text as well, so that we have that nice in the center. Then I'm gonna hold Shift on the keyboard and I'm gonna drag up until the center of the artboard, which is right here. If you'll notice when I'm dragging, you'll see that guide. This is going to sit right on the middle of this artboard. So it's not quite centered, it's just a little bit up. So in the corner, we're gonna need our logo, and we're gonna touch that on the left-hand side of this first column. So I'm just gonna grab my type tool, T on the keyboard, and we're just gonna type out travel. For our logo, we're gonna go with a 30-point font, and this is going to be a bold weight. Also on this large text here in the center, we're using bold as well. So I'm going to align that on that left-hand column. With that selected, I'm going to hold Alt, and if I move my mouse around outside of that, you'll see all of the dimensions in pink. So we're gonna go 40 pixels from the top of the artboard, just like that. On the right side, we're gonna have a sign up button. So I'm just gonna type out the word sign up. And for this, we're gonna go with a 17-point medium font, and we're going to center that vertically with our text, and we're also going to align that on the right-hand side of the rightmost column. I'm gonna hold Alt and click and drag on that sign up text to create a duplicate, and I'm going to add 50 spacing from the left-hand side of that. So I'm gonna align this to the right, and I'm also going to grab the sign up and align that to the right as well. So now I'm gonna change this text to search. Next to that, we're gonna have a search icon, and this is from Feather Icons, I believe. So I'm just going to drag that in, and I'm gonna put that 5 pixels to the left of the search text and center it vertically with the search text. So that's pretty much it for the navigation. Down here at the bottom, we're going to have this little pop-up slide in and out, and it's going to recommend a trip or a series of trips for the person viewing this website. So we're gonna go ahead and create that now. So I'm gonna grab the rectangle tool, and I'm gonna go in 2 columns, and right here on this 3rd column, I'm gonna drag over to the end of this column over here. So we have a 2-column gap on each side. So that's 1,152 wide. And for the height on that, I'm gonna set that to 200 just to make it a nice even height. Immediately, I'm going to remove the border, and I'm gonna set the border radius right here to 7 pixels for a nice round in the corner on this rectangle. For now, I'm just going to touch this to the bottom of the artboard. We're gonna push that down just a little bit later, but for now, we're gonna leave it here so we can work with it. So I'm going to zoom in just a bit. And the first thing we're going to need here is some text to recommend a trip. So I'm just going to type out some junk text. And because it's in all white, I'm going to go ahead and set it to this black color that we use in the background, the 171717. So I'm just going to set it to that. And I'm also going to set this to 30 point font. And I'm going to align this to the left. And for now, we're going to center this vertically inside of this rectangle, and we'll do 80 spacing on the left-hand side of that rectangle. And here, I'm just going to put summer trip to Nepal. Right below this, I want to show how many trips are actually on the site for Nepal. So I'm just going to grab the type tool one more time, and we'll just type out a random number, 431. So we have 431 unique trips available, and I'm going to set this to Helvetica 17 point font, and this is going to be regular weight. I'm going to set it to the 171717 black. And on this, we're going to lower the opacity down for a good contrast between this text and the title above it. So we're going to lower it to 50% opacity. We'll align it to the left-hand side of this text. So I'm just going to make sure that aligns correctly. And zooming in here, we're going to add 5 pixels from the bottom of the text just to add a little space there. Now grabbing both of those texts, holding Shift, I'm going to drag up until this grouping now is centered vertically inside of this rectangle. On the right-hand side, we're going to have a nice square button for booking or viewing these trips. So I'm just going to hold Shift while I drag out a rectangle, and that's going to make it a perfect square. I'm going to lock the aspect ratio, and I'm going to set this to 70. So that's 70 wide and 70 high. For the border radius, since we have a border radius on the rectangle around it, I'm going to set this to 4 pixels. I'm going to remove the border, and I'm going to set this to the blue color that we're using in this design, which is 3F7EFA. And then I'm going to center this vertically and put 80 spacing on the right-hand side, just like we did with the text on the left. Inside of that, we're going to have an icon. So I'm just going to drag out the booking trip icon, and I'm going to center it inside of this button. Holding Shift, I'm going to grab both of them, and I'm going to use my alignment tools just to make sure everything is centered, and we'll also check the spacing on the side, holding Alt. So once that's done, I'm just going to click and drag to grab all that, and Command G or Control G on a PC to create this into a grouping. So before we do the parallax effect, which is going to be the last thing we do in this tutorial, we're going to need that image in the background so we can at least see what the design is going to look like. So I'm going to drag out a rectangle that is the full height and width of the artboard, 1920 by 1080. I'm going to remove the border, and then I'm going to go into my folder and just drag in the image just like that. Command Shift left square bracket key or Control Shift left square bracket key will send that all the way to the back. So I'm going to select the artboard now, and I'm going to turn off the layout grid since we have all of our elements here on the screen now. Immediately, you'll notice that a lot of these white elements are very hard to see because the sky is just close enough to white where we can't read it. So the first thing we're going to do here is drag out a rectangle on top of this. Again, full height and width of the artboard, and we're going to remove the border. I'm going to set this to 171717, and then I'm going to send this all the way to the back with Command Shift left square bracket key. And then Command right square bracket key once to bring it just in front of that image. Now I've went ahead and tested this a little bit, but I'm going to drag the opacity slider down until I'm happy with the separation between the background and the white text here. So I'm going to drag this down to 32%. Again, a good way to test this is just go all the way to 0 and then just start dragging it up until you have a good contrast. I'm looking right here in the corner at that smallest text, and I'm going to keep dragging until I get to 32. All right, so for now, we're gonna call this okay, and we're gonna go on down to the bottom section. So I'm gonna select the artboard, and I'm gonna go up here in the height value, and I'm just gonna add ×2 and click enter. So that is going to give us another 920 by 1080 section down here at the bottom. So once we have that, I'm going to select this grouping that we created. And with this selected, I'm going to move this down. So I'm going to hold Shift and use my down arrow on my keyboard to move in increments of 10. So 10, 20, 30 pixels will do. We just want a nice little overlap there. So now we have this harsh cut from our image into this black screen. So we want to add a transition to that. So I'm going to grab a rectangle, and somewhere around here in the middle of the artboard, I'm just going to drag this down to the bottom of this image. We're going to remove the border, and for the fill, we're going to set that to the black color we've been using, the 171717. And I'm going to select the swatch here, and instead of solid color, we're going to go with a linear gradient. So I'm just going to copy this hex color, and I'm going to go to the lighter shade that Adobe XD naturally generates, and I'm going to paste that. So now we have a linear gradient with the same exact color. So I'm going to select the topmost swatch, which is this one right here, and I'm just going to drag the opacity all the way down to 0. So now we have this nice transition. So now all we got to do is organize this in our layers. So to quickly do that, I'm going to hit Command Shift left square bracket key, and that will send it all the way to the back. And then Command right square bracket key one time will bring it right in front of the image. So now you'll see that this gradient goes nicely into this background. Now, something weird Adobe XD does a little bit when I'm prototyping is if I zoom in here, you'll see this 1 pixel line. So I'm just going to select that shadow, and I'm just going to drop it down 1 pixel. So that will remove that line for good. So I'm not sure why there is a gray kind of line there that's generated in XD, but I don't really want to look at it. So I've just moved it down 1 pixel to try to cover it up. I know you can still see it a little bit, but when I go to view this in the live preview and prototype this and record that, it should take that away. So that's good for now. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle that is 1920 by 1080 in the bottom half of the design here. So I'm off by 1 pixel, so 1080. And I'm just going to make sure that's centered to this bottom section. I'm going to remove the border, and all I'm going to do is go up to the artboard, select the name, and turn back on my grid. So now holding Alt and Shift, I'm going to drag in from the corner until this matches the width of this rectangle right here. So basically we went into columns. So now that is exactly centered in this section right here. So that's what we want. And I'm going to use this as a guide. So I'm actually going to turn the fill all the way down to straight 0, which is pure black. And then we can select the artboard and turn off the layout grid. So now you can see what we have. So what I want to do is I want to have 3 cards here. And to do this, I'm just going to grab a rectangle, and I'm going to drag this to the bottom of this placeholder, and then until I get to the center. Then I'm going to grab another rectangle, and I'm just going to drag this one out until I get to the center that way. And as you can guess, I'm going to fill it in just like that. Now I want some spacing in between this. So I know I want 40 spacing in between each of these cards. So the first thing I'm going to do is select this card, and I'm going to subtract 20 from this number. So it's 576 to 556. Hit enter on that. And so that adds 20 spacing there. So we're going to do the same thing on this one. So we'll subtract from the width value down to 556. And if we move that back over to the edge of that placeholder, now we have 40 spacing. So no need to do that twice. So I'm just going to delete that. And also we're going to need the spacing here. So we'll subtract that from the height value on this one. So that's going to go from 324 to 304. Make sure this is in the corner of that placeholder. Hold Alt and drag down a duplicate. So now we can select that black placeholder in the background and delete it. And now if I select each one of these and hold Alt, you can see we have 40 spacing throughout these cards. So that's just a nice, simple, mathematical way to do it. So now we have those cards looking nice in the design. So we're going to mimic what we did for the border radius right here on this card. So we're going to put 7 pixels for the border radius. Make sure we remove our border. And on these, I'm going to set these to pure black just for the meantime so we can see them. I'm going to go back into my folder, and I have 3 more images. So I'm going to drag in an image of, I believe that is Peru, and this one is going to be France, and I think this one is Australia. So now that we have that, on this one, I'm going to adjust the crop because I don't like that sun. So I'm just going to scale this up holding Alt, and then I'm going to move this over so that you can't see the sun anymore in this one, just like that. So now we have these 3 images. I'm going to select all 3 of them and turn the opacity down to 50%. And each one of these is going to have text in the center. So I'm going to grab the type tool, and we'll call this one Peru. And I'm going to set the font to white, and this is going to be 30 bold, and we'll center align that. And with that selected, I'm going to hold Shift and grab that image card, and we're going to make sure that is centered inside there. I'm going to hold Alt to create a duplicate for each one of these cards, and I'm just going to place them in like that. So this one's going to be France, and we'll make sure that's centered with our alignment tools. And then this one is going to be Australia, and we'll make sure that is centered as well. So this is pretty much our static design done. So now we're ready to go to Photoshop and make our edits so that we can then prototype the parallax effect. So here in my folder, I have the image right here. So I'm going to drag this image directly into Photoshop, and that'll load up the document the same size as this image. So really quickly before we start cutting up our image here in Photoshop, I just want to talk a little bit about parallax effects and what they are and what we're going to be doing to create the effect itself in this tutorial. I don't want to get too much into this in this video just because I don't want the tutorial to be too long, but if you guys are interested in an in-depth parallax video, I'll see if there's enough stuff I can put in that and make it its own separate video and go into detail, similar to the video I did around negative space and UI design that you guys seem to like. So if you're interested in something like that, just let me know down in the comments below. So anyway, a parallax scrolling effect is achieved by moving the background elements slower than the foreground elements as the camera goes past. In this case, we're scrolling down. That's going to give us the illusion of having depth. So since here we have a static image, we're going to have to cut this up into pieces so that we can move things at different speeds. So you can see by this really well drawn diagram, these are going to be our sections. The number is going to count up to the furthest back element. So these are going to be our different layers. 5 being the furthest element in the background and 1 being the closest element to us in the foreground. 3 and 2 are kind of in the middle ground. So 4 is probably not going to move much in the parallax effect, if at all. And 3 will move a little bit quicker, and that's going to increase as we get to number 1, moving the most, kind of giving us that nice effect. A good website to look at for an example is firewatchgame.com. If you've ever looked up parallax effects before, this has probably been an example you've seen. So as we scroll down, you'll notice that it kind of sandwiches up here. I like to think of it as a drone hovering over this, and as it scrolls down, it's kind of like the drone landing on the ground. So it's giving us that nice 3D depth. So that's what we're going to be doing with this image. So to get started, I'm going to crop out the first section of this image with you, and then I'll skip to the end and show you the final result. Also, I will have this Photoshop document with all of the layers cut out right here, as you can see in the project file down in the description as well, just so you guys can take a look at it and see what I've done. So I'm just going to unlock the background image by clicking the lock icon. And there are a few different ways you can remove this section from the image. You can use the pen tool to create the selection, the lasso tool. But in this case, since I want to do this quickly, and since we have a lot of detail in this and it's not going to matter all that much if I make a mistake, I'm going to use the magnetic lasso tool because it's going to do a pretty good job following this rock edge. So I'm just going to click and drag down, and you'll see that it starts to snap to the rock edge. This bush I really don't care about right now. I'm just going to go straight through it. And then I'm going to go around the guy here. And I'm trying to go as slow as possible. Obviously for the video length, I'm going a little bit quicker than I normally would. But anyways, it doesn't matter because after I complete this selection, I'm then going to go in with the normal lasso tool and adjust the selection itself to make sure everything is exactly the way I want it. So we're coming up here on the end, and then I'm just going to come back over here to the top and complete the selection. So now that we have the selection, I'm going to grab the normal lasso tool. And since we already have a selection active here, if I hold Shift, you'll notice the plus icon next to the tool up here. And if I hold Alt, you'll notice the minus sign. So we can take and add from the selection just by holding those two keys. Or you can select it up here manually if you want. But to give this a nice edge down here and get this corner, I'm going to hold Shift, and then I'm just going to click and drag. And I'm just going to go down here at the bottom and grab this edge. And then I'm going to finish off just like that. And we're going to come up to the top and just release somewhere around there. So now we have a good portion of this selected. Let's zoom in here where we can begin to correct some of the things the magnetic lasso tool got wrong. So I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm just going to grab the rest of this guy's forehead and then finish up the jacket. Miss some of that. Grab this down here at the bottom. And you can go through this and make this selection absolutely perfect. But I'm gonna call that good for now. And from here, I'm going to hit Command J with this background layer selected. And what that's going to do is, instead of removing it from this original image, it's going to create it on its own layer from that selection. So it's working non-destructive. So I'm then going to repeat that for all the different sections I showed you, 2 through 5 here. So I'm gonna go to the end document now, and here is what we have. So I'm gonna turn off all of my layers really quick. So layer 0 is the bottommost layer, and this is just the image. And I have this here just so if I missed anything, I don't have anything missing from the image. Next, layer 1 is the sky. Layer 2 is that background mountains here. And I've got a little bit of overhang here. You can see a little bit of the guy and some of the number 3 and 2. The reason I've done that is so when these stack on top of each other, nothing is missing and there's no seams. So then we have layer 3, which is this one, then the second one, and then the topmost layer. So when you stack those on top of each other like a puzzle piece, you'll notice that right here we have a little bit missing, and that's why we have that background layer there. So once you're done here in Photoshop, just save that up, and I'm here inside of my folder. This is the assets folder inside of the project file. So you guys could just use this if you'd like. I'm gonna right click on this, go to Open With, and Adobe XD. So now in that Adobe XD file, you can see if I hover over different pieces of this, we have all of the layers from Photoshop. So if I double click on this canvas, you can see all of our layers from Photoshop are now inside of Adobe XD. So what we're gonna do now is hit A on the keyboard for the Artboard tool. I'm going to grab a 1920 by 1080 blank artboard. And then I'm going to hit Command A, which is gonna select all of our layers. And then I'm just going to drag them over onto this artboard and delete this original canvas. Command A again to select all of the image selections. And then I'm going to drag this until my smart guides tell me it's centered just like that. Then we can uncheck the responsive resize so that doesn't bother us when we're scaling. I'm gonna hold Shift and Alt and I'm gonna scale this down to just a little bit bigger than our artboard, just like that. So now we have this fitting our artboard. Now we want to mask it. So I'm going to create a rectangle. That's the full size of the artboard. Once again, 1920 by 1080. Remove the border. Then I'm gonna hit V on the keyboard for the selection tool, and I'm just going to click outside into the pasteboard. So now we have nothing selected. Then I'm going to hit Command A once again, and this time it's going to select all the image layers and the rectangle on top. Now we can hit Command Shift M, and that will mask the shape. Or you can go up to Object Mask with Shape if you'd like to do it that way. So now we have our rectangle and all of our layers are masked inside of this. So with this selected, I'm going to hit Command C to copy that to the pasteboard, and then we can just close this file out. We no longer need it. Here inside of our design file, before we paste that in, I'm going to click on landing and double click on that to edit the name. And I'm just going to change this to landing-static. So this is going to have nothing to do with our prototype. So this is just what our design looks like. So before we paste in, I'm gonna hit A on the keyboard and create another 1920 by 1080 artboard. And then I'm finally going to hit Command V to paste that image into the center of this new artboard. So this artboard, I'm gonna double click on it and we're gonna name this Start. So as you can probably guess, this is going to be the starting point for our prototype. So this is going to be what the image looks like on the website. Very similar to what we have here. Then when this is scrolled up, we're then going to modify that to the end state. Before we create our end state, first we need to make sure our layers are in the correct order. Sometimes when going from Photoshop to Adobe XD, it likes to rearrange the order for layers for some reason. That's why I left all of our layers numbered in Photoshop so we can easily reorganize them. So I'm going to double click to get inside of this mask, and you'll notice right now that these are not in the correct order. So 5 needs to be at the top, and then 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So it's actually gonna make me unmask this. So I'm gonna go hit Command Shift G to unmask it. I'm gonna drag that out of the way for now. Then I'm going to go back into our Start artboard, and I'm going to reorganize these layers into the correct order. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Then we can drag this back on top, and then we can select everything again, Command Shift M to mask again. So now we're back to where we were, but now if we double click, you can see all of our layers are in the correct order. So once that's done, I'm just gonna select the artboard and Command D to create a duplicate, and we'll call this end. So now we're going to adjust this image to the end state. So first thing I want to do is I want to move everything down. Since we're doing a scroll effect, this image is not on the screen very long. It's essentially going to do this. So what I want to do is, for a really good effect, I want to bring the horizon right here down a little bit on the page. So I'm going to double click to edit all the layers, and I'm going to select layers 5 through 0, which is every part of this image. And I'm going to drag the horizon down till it's about in the center of this artboard, just like that. So next, I'm going to grab the front layer and I'm going to drag this all the way to the bottom of the artboard, just like that. And then I'm going to grab number 2 here, this rock on the side, and just move it up just slightly. So all of our motion is pretty much going to happen from everything shifting down and this moving up. So if you would like to see what this looks like, you can always go to the prototype tab, select the artboard, drag a wire over, we'll do a tap, and then this is going to be an auto animate. We're going to set this to ease in and ease out, and this needs to be around 3-4 seconds, depending on how long you want to see that. Then we'll select end, and we'll drag back over. So if we select this artboard and we hit live preview, let's try to center this here, you can see that's going to shift just like that. And if you'd like to see how it's going to look when it scrolls, you could always just move the whole thing up just like that. Hit live preview again. This is going to give you a good idea of what it looks like as it's scrolling up and then as it's scrolling back down. Pretty cool effect. Before we move on, I did want to mention, I did move all of this down in this image just to exaggerate the effect even more. So not only are the objects in the foreground moving at a quicker rate than the background, but now the background's coming down, which is going the opposite direction. So that's just adding more depth to the design. So from here, we can really quickly finish up our design. So I'm just going to grab the landing page static, holding Alt to create a duplicate. And I'm going to place a duplicate below each one of these. We'll call this one landing start, and then we'll call this one landing end. I'm just going to slide the overlay out of the way and delete the background image, and we'll just drag this layer into its position. We'll send it to the back with Command Shift left square bracket key, and then we'll add the overlay back on top of it. Same thing over here, just sliding that out of the way a little bit, deleting the image. Then we'll move this one into its place. Command Shift left square bracket key to send it all the way to the back. And then we'll add our overlay back on top of that. Then we can just delete these artboards out of the way. We no longer need them. Switching to the prototype tab, we can relink these up. So selecting landing dash start, we can drag the wire to the end state. We're gonna do a tap trigger with auto animate, ease in and out over 3 seconds. And then we'll select landing end, and we'll go back to the start and just make sure all these settings are the same. They should be. Then what we can do is, going back to the design tab, we're gonna grab a rectangle and we're gonna create one down here in the bottom half of this section. It should be 1920 by 1080. And we're gonna grab every element of this artboard and we're going to drag it up just like that. And then we can delete that rectangle, and that just aligns everything the way we need it. And we can change the height value on this artboard to 1080. Going to the landing start, now we'll adjust its artboard to 1080. So if we save that and we select the artboard, go to the prototype tab, we're going to set landing start as our home artboard. So now we can hit live preview and it's going to load that artboard up. We click, we get our effect as we scroll down. Looks nice. So now if we want to do a few other things, we can drag this way out of the way, somewhere over here. You can play with the timing on this. Basically, I wanted it to kind of slide out of the way pretty quick so we could see all this effect going on right there. And then another thing I did is back over here on the landing start. I grab each one of these cards down here at the bottom and I scale them in just a little bit, making this one the largest, the medium, and the smallest. And then we can set this back to 1080. And when we hit live preview, now the cards will grow as they come in at different times. And we go back, this slides over, those shrink, and everything is done. So that is it for today's tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed creating that parallax effect with this travel landing page using Adobe XD and Adobe Photoshop. Thanks again to Milanote for sponsoring today's video. If you'd like to check out their product for planning your next creative project, check out the link at the top of the description. If you guys liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more design related content. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers, which is absolutely insane. And I'll give you guys a proper thank you once we've hit it in the video after we hit it. But I just wanted to say thank you guys really quick for everyone who has clicked the subscribe button and supported me with the likes and the comments this far. You guys are all amazing, and 100,000 of you is just nuts. But anyway, make sure you have that notification bell on so you don't miss any of the videos coming soon. And as always, have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.